Today we are going to be making my grandmother's banana bread, and this is pretty much the only banana bread that I care to eat. Most banana bread that's store-bought tastes very different and the texture is very different, and I like this better. I think it's sweeter and has a much more pronounced banana flavor. So these bananas are still in pretty good shape, and hopefully I won't need to use them. I want bananas that are dark and that have spots on them and that's beginning to soften. This is a much sweeter banana, and that's what I'm looking for. So this is a good way to use up bananas that have gone bad, or maybe you've bought them marked down at the grocery store, something like that. And I'm going to put the recipe on the Horticulture and Homes blog. I think that'll just be a good place to keep those sorts of things so that you can find those easier in files that way than trying to sift through a bunch of video. And I'm also not going to use a mixer today. I'm going to do this all by hand, so if you were camping or whatever, you could actually do this. And first we're going to start with the shortening, and this is the shortening that I melted down, that I've been experimenting with, and put into sealed canning jars for storage. And this is a bit soft today. It's a little warm. This is really soft, and what I'm finding is the density, I think, is a little bit heavier because air was not whipped into the product as it was cooling. So I'm going to use just a little bit less of the shortening than what I normally would, because I don't want there to be a heaviness issue, because working with the bananas, that's already an issue with weight as far as the bread is concerned, and the texture. So normally we would put our shortening into our bowl and we would mix that until it's light and fluffy. And I'm going to mix this just a little bit and then start adding the sugar to that. So you're going to have your shortening light and fluffy, and then you're going to start to cream that with your sugar. And this is pretty soft, so I'm going to start to add some sugar right now, and we'll see what happens. Since the shortening's a bit different than what it normally would be, I wanted to see what would happen. And I also wanted to, since the shortening's like this, if I wanted to substitute butter, I might be able to do that if this works out, because it, it doesn't have all the air in it like shortening does. I've never made it with using butter. It would change the browning process, and it would make some changes texture-wise. And except for the banana, this could all be made from your pantry storage, unless you happen to have a greenhouse and have banana trees, or you live in an area that you can grow banana, but you've got to be pretty far south in the States to do that. Okay, I'm going to finish that up and come back to it later instead of wasting time now. And then I'm going to take these bananas, and there's some bruising. That's no big deal. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to hurt anything. And you'll see that when I'm done mashing this banana, it will actually turn dark. And that's not a problem, so don't worry about it. And I like to mash it with a fork, which makes it go a little bit quicker. I'm going to go ahead and use my handy dandy egg slicer and slice the banana. And that will require less mashing with the fork. Okay, and once I have that in there, I'm going to start to mash that. I'm going to need a couple cups. I'm going to make 2 loaves. I like to make a double batch so that I can have one to eat and have one to store in the freezer for later. So I'll mash the bananas and add my sugar to my shortening, and I'll be back. Alright, now I have my shortening and sugar whipped together. And as I said, I'm doing this by hand, and I switched to a wire whip because I want to incorporate some air into that. I was thinking about the butter issues, if I'd use butter. I'd have to try it, but my inclination would be not to, because I think there would be other issues with the way the product browned, and there's already quite a bit of sugar in the banana and in the recipe, so that could lead to some other issues. And this recipe was one my mother ate growing up. She's in her 70s now, so it's been around for quite a while. And I don't know if it came out of a particular cookbook. I just know it was my grandmother's recipe, and it was one thing that I made sure that I had years ago once I was an adult. Okay, I have my shortening and sugar creamed together, and over here I have my bananas, and I've mashed those. And I have some small chunks, and that's fine. I don't want it to be really runny. I do want some little chunks of fruit. Okay. And that'll start to turn dark, and that's okay. Not a big deal. And if your bananas are more ripe than what I used, your banana's going to be even darker. But that's fine. That's not a huge deal. Okay, now I'm going to add my eggs. And I'm just going to add my egg a little at a time and beat that together. Remember, since the banana is such a heavy product, it's good to make sure you have incorporated some air. And for 2 loaves of bread, this is 4 eggs, and it's a lot of egg. And there's a lot of baking soda, there's both baking soda and baking powder in this recipe. And for 2 loaves, it calls for 4 teaspoons of baking powder. And that's quite a lot of baking powder, but we have a density issue with these bananas, so that's what that's about. Now I'm going to gradually add some of my flour mixture in. Okay, I'm going to finish incorporating my my dry ingredients into my wet ingredients, and I'll be right back. As I add my dry ingredients into my flour and shortening, my wet ingredients, I'm going to add a little bit of this banana each time and alternate between the banana and the flour. finish this up in just a moment. Alright, I almost have all of this mixed together. And I just wanted to show you how dark my bananas got before I put all of them into the bread. So I've got just a little bit of mixing to do here. And the last thing I'm going to do is add nuts. You can add whatever type of nuts that you would like paired with banana. I happen to like pecans, so that's what I'm adding today. And I don't know if any of you go out junking and antiquing, but I find this little chopper very handy. And it just has these little blades, and it's a plunger type action. And I chop my pecans this way. That's the last thing that goes in. These typically they will have a wooden block in the bottom of the jar so that it doesn't cut up the bottom of the jar. Most of the time those are intact when you find them. Sometimes they're not, but there should be a wooden disc in the bottom. Alright, I'm going to stir the nuts in, and then I'm going to place these into my loaf pans. And in a traditional oven, I'm going to bake this at 350 for about an hour and 10 minutes. I'm going to use convection bake today, and it should take about 50 minutes at 325. So this is the first time I'm testing this recipe with convection baking. Alright, this is what the bread looks like before it goes into the oven. And I've used a regular sized loaf pan here. I have some larger loaf pans. This one's a little bit smaller, so I use this. And then these are like 3/4 loaf pans. And I've used those also. So this isn't going to bake quite as long as if I had fixed 2 standard loaves. So it's time to bake.